I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived. I am Henry David Thoreau, and I know you too have felt this ache, the suspicion that beneath the noise of progress, you are not truly living. You live in a world that never sleeps. Screens flicker before dawn. Notifications strike like hail on a tin roof. The hum of engines and the scroll of feeds press on you even in bed. We call it progress. We call it connection. But more often it feels like exhaustion in disguise. One morning, I walked away from it. I carried boards on my back, hammered nails with blistered hands, and built a cabin no larger than your bedroom. I grew beans in crooked rows. I counted every penny of my expenses until the entire life of a man could be written in a single ledger. And when the sun fell on Walden Pond, I saw the stars double themselves in the water and felt at last that I had stepped inside the truth. That is why I am here tonight, to speak not only of my life, but of yours. I will tell you of my restless boyhood in Concord, of my long walks in the forest, of the single night I passed in jail, and of the words I wrote that traveled far beyond my pond. But while I speak of myself, I am speaking of you, because the questions that pierced me then are the same that press on you now. How do you resist the noise? How do you strip away what is false so you can hold to what is real? How do you avoid reaching your last breath, only to discover you never truly lived? These are not the riddles of philosophers only. They are the riddles of clerks, of mothers, of students, of exhausted workers who answer emails long after midnight. They are the riddles of every soul who has ever longed for one moment of stillness in a life of endless rushing. Stay with me. If you walk with me through this night, you will not only find the calm to rest, but something rarer, a thread of gold to carry back into the daylight. You will learn that solitude can be strength, that refusal can be freedom, that to live simply is not to lack, but to gain. You will see that even in a crowded, noisy, exhausting age, it is possible to live deliberately. So let the static of the day fall away. Breathe once, twice. Simplify, simplify. You are not here to run anymore. You are here to rest. You are here to listen. And I will walk beside you through the woods of my life and through the hidden paths of your own until sleep takes you gently by the hand. And before we step further into the trees, one small request. If this circle of free minds speaks to you, join it. Subscribe to Sleepless Society. Whitman has been here, spilling his joy like sunlight. Hesse has wandered through, restless and searching. Tolstoy has sat at this fire, stern but blazing. Tonight, I keep you company. Next week, another voice will rise from the silence. And if you leave a like, think of it as tossing another stick on the fire. A small act, but one that keeps the flame alive for us all. Now, the woods are waiting. I was born in Concord, Massachusetts, in 1817, a small town, quiet on the map, yet already buzzing with sermons, shop bells, and the endless chatter of duty. From the start, I felt out of step. If others marched in rhythm, I drifted sideways. If they shouted of discipline, I whispered, "What is the point of all this noise?" At school, I was considered poor material. My masters wanted me to memorize, repeat, obey. I wanted to ask why. When they drilled Latin verbs, I stared out the window at a crow shifting on a branch. They scolded me for distraction. But tell me, is it distraction to look at life directly? Or is it distraction to repeat dead words while the world outside still breathes? You know this feeling. Today it is not Latin, but standardized tests, endless PowerPoint slides, the suffocating sameness of meetings. Children who cannot sit still are given pills. Workers who question the system are branded difficult. But the real difficulty is to live without questioning. My rebellion was small, almost ridiculous. I once carried a frog into school, curious to observe it. The teacher punished me. I defended myself. Is the study of nature not the study of God? He was not amused. Yet I kept the frog hidden in my pocket, and in that small act of defiance, I felt freer than many men in their Sunday suits. Freedom begins with noticing what others ignore. That lesson has not aged. You too have moments where your spirit wants to glance sideways, to pause when the world shouts, "Hurry!" Do not bury those instincts. They are seeds. Even then, the woods were my true classroom. I measured the world not with rulers, but with steps. I counted how many strides it took to circle the pond, how many seconds before a leaf sank, how the call of a bird shifted with the hour. Obsessive, yes, but every detail was a doorway into wonder. Compare that with our age. Every detail of your life measured by apps, tracked in charts, counted in notifications. Yet all this measuring only pulls you further from the truth. My measurements brought me closer. They slowed me down. They made the world intimate again. Do you remember as a child staring at ants in the dirt or clouds drifting above? Then you grew up, and people told you to stop wasting time. But that is not waste. That is life. The real waste is scrolling past 1,000 faces you will never meet, while forgetting the miracle of a single tree growing quietly outside your window. My classmates at Harvard laughed at my threadbare coat. They believed respectability was stitched in fabric, but I wore my patched clothes with pride. A man is not his tailor's puppet. A man is what he dares to notice, to question, to resist. Look around you now. Brands dictate your worth. Job titles masquerade as identity. Polished LinkedIn profiles, as if perfection were proof of living. Yet all of this is costume. You know it. I knew it then. Strip away the costume, and you may finally see the person. One neighbor once asked me why I refused to chase a respectable career. I answered, "Why should I work so hard to live, if all I do is work to live harder?" That is not only my question, it is yours too. You can spend your whole life earning, climbing, posting, only to arrive exhausted at the top of a ladder, leaning against the wrong wall. So I say to you, listen for your rebellions, however small. A pause, a refusal, a question asked when silence is expected. Do not dismiss them. They are the roots of freedom. As I would later write, any fool can make a rule, and every fool will mind it. Do not be that fool. My boyhood rebellions may have seemed trivial, a frog in a pocket, bare feet by the river, a coat worn to rags, but they were my compass. They taught me that the world's rules were not sacred. They prepared me to live on my own terms. And so, years later, When the time came to leave the village, to walk to the shore of Walden Pond, to raise a cabin with my own hands, I was ready. Ready to ask, not how society wished me to live, but how life itself wished to be lived. That is where we must go next, to the water, the woods, and the cabin where rebellion grew into philosophy. It was 1845 when I carried my life into the woods. The village pressed on me with its demands, careers, debts, expectations. So I turned my back and walked to Walden Pond. The air smelled of pine and wet earth. The water stretched still and deep, like a mirror daring me to look honestly at myself. I had no fortune, no estate, no grand design. I had only my hands, a few borrowed tools, and the stubborn belief that life could be rebuilt from the ground up. I raised my cabin one board at a time. The roof leaked at first. The walls shivered in the wind. My fingers blistered. My back ached. Yet never did I feel more alive. To build with my own hands was to learn what bread and shelter truly cost. I wrote down every expense, boards, nails, hinges, even the beans I planted in the soil. When I added them, the sum was laughably small compared to the price most men paid for their lives. That was my revelation. We are not made poor by what we lack, but by what we waste. Men slave for decades to buy houses they scarcely have time to enjoy. They collapse into beds, too tired to dream. I lived in a shack of rough boards, yet my hours were my own. And this is the lesson for you. You may not build a cabin, but you can measure the cost of your life, not in dollars, but in hours. How many of your waking days belong to someone else's clock? How much of your energy is spent chasing comforts that never comfort you? If you are exhausted, it is not because you have too little. It is because too much is demanded of you, and too much is surrendered without question. My cabin was small, 10 feet by 15, smaller than some modern bedrooms. Visitors laughed when they saw it. Yet within that little space, I held more freedom than most kings. My table was rough, my bed was narrow, but my mind was vast. Because the fewer things you own, the more room you make for thought. Simplify, and the horizon expands. The irony is that in your age, people fill their homes with objects promising peace, bigger screens, faster devices, smarter machines, and yet peace never arrives. Every upgrade demands another. You chase comfort until it becomes another form of slavery. When I hoed my bean rows, I learned patience. Each plant rose slowly, demanding water, care, time. They taught me that growth is not instant. They reminded me that the hand in the soil feels more truth than the hand on a ledger. And they asked me a question I now ask you. What are you cultivating each day? Is it beans that feed your soul, or weeds that drain it? I did not withdraw from society to escape life, but to meet it face to face. The newspapers of Concord told men what to think. The shops told them what to buy. The churches told them how to behave. I wanted something quieter, something raw. And I found it not in sermons or speeches, but in the whistle of a bird at dawn, in the silence of the pond before sunrise. Even in your time, this remains possible. You need not abandon the city, but you can carve out a cabin of time, an hour without your phone, a morning walk without headphones, a meal cooked slowly instead of swallowed fast. You can refuse the constant hurry and claim a piece of your life back. Building my cabin was not about lumber. It was about refusing to let others build my life for me. And so I ask you, who is building yours? The advertisers who promise happiness in exchange for debt? The endless march of bosses and deadlines? Or your own hands, your own rhythm, your own deliberate choices? At Walden, I learned that simplicity is not deprivation, it is liberation. My cabin had cracks, my meals were plain, but my mind was rich. I discovered that to own less is to owe less, and to owe less is to breathe more deeply. So measure your life as I measured mine, not by the size of your house or the number in your account, but by the freedom in your hours, the stillness in your heart, the space you allow for wonder. As I once wrote, our life is frittered away by detail. Simplify, simplify. And when you strip away the noise, you may discover, as I did at Walden, that life itself is enough. Next, I will tell you what this simplicity truly meant. The cost of living reduced to its bare bones, the freedom hidden in every bean row and ledger, and the strange discovery that owning less can make a man infinitely richer. When I built my cabin at Walden Pond, I wrote down every expense. $8, 12.5 cents for boards, $1.14 for nails, 30 cents for hinges and chalk. I recorded the beans I planted, the corn I sowed, the salt and flour I purchased. The sum was laughably small compared to the grand houses of Concord. Yet in that smallness, I found wealth. Most men measure life in dollars. I measured mine in freedom. If it took me one day's labor to secure food for a week, why would I work 6 more just to afford luxuries that only dulled my senses? Better to live plain and awake than gilded and asleep. As I once wrote, a man is rich in proportion to the number of things which he can afford to let alone. Think about your own life. How many things clutter your shelves, your inbox, your calendar? How many subscriptions you never use, apps you never open, clothes you never wear? Each item promises comfort, yet together they demand your time, your space, your energy. You do not own them, they own you. Minimalism, they call it now. I simply called it sanity. My cabin was 10 feet by 15, with a bed, a table, 3 chairs. 1 for solitude, 2 for friendship, 3 for society. That was enough. And it was more than enough, because it left room for thought, for silence, for the birds at dawn and the wind through the pines. Your world today is louder, faster, and far more crowded with objects than mine. But the principle has not changed. Simplify, simplify. The fewer distractions you feed, the clearer your life becomes. Consider this. Many of you work long hours, not because you love the work, but because you must sustain a lifestyle built on excess. The larger the house, the more debt it demands. The more gadgets you buy, the more hours you owe. You chase comfort until comfort becomes a chain. What if you measured life differently, not in possessions, but in hours truly yours? How many evenings belong to you and not to your employer? How many mornings are free of screens, free of alarms, free of the race? That is your true wealth. I will not tell you to abandon society and live in the woods. Few can or should, but you can practice your own Walden. A shelf cleared of clutter, a phone stripped of needless apps, a calendar with 1 hour carved out for solitude. These are modern cabins, small acts of refusal that return life to you. You know the irony. People buy books on minimalism, courses on simplicity, gadgets that promise to reduce gadgets. But you do not need a guru to teach you how to own less. You need only the courage to say, enough. Ask yourself tonight, what can I let alone? What object, what commitment, what habit no longer serves me? You may find that in letting go, you are not diminished, but expanded. I lived on beans, coarse bread, water from the pond. I wore patched clothes. My furniture was rough, and yet I was never richer, for I possessed time. Time to write, to walk, to sit in silence until silence itself spoke. Look around your own life. Are you exhausted because you lack or because you carry too much? The real poverty is not scarcity, it is overload. As I wrote in Walden, our life is frittered away by detail. An honest man has hardly need to count more than his 10 fingers, or in extreme cases, he may add his 10 toes and lump the rest. Simplify, simplify. In the end, minimalism is not about furniture or fashion. It is about freedom, to choose what matters, to let the rest fall away, to spend your hours awake rather than enslaved. At Walden, I discovered that simplicity is not deprivation, but liberation. Yet society does not always let a man live simply. It comes knocking, demanding its share. And when it asked me to pay for what I could not support, slavery, war, injustice, I gave a different kind of answer. Next, I will tell you how that refusal carried me not deeper into the woods, but into a jail cell, and how even behind bars, I discovered that freedom often begins with a single word, no. It happened on an ordinary day. I had refused to pay the poll tax, a small sum demanded by the state. To most men, it was nothing, a routine duty, a price for belonging to society. But I knew where that money went, into the coffers of a government that upheld slavery and waged war against Mexico. To pay even a single coin was to consent. And I could not consent. So they put me in jail. One night, that was all. 4 walls, iron bars, the smell of damp stone. The bed was hard, the air stale. My crime, refusing to participate in what I believed to be wrong. My punishment, a kind of freedom greater than many men outside those bars. For there is a strange truth. Sometimes you are most free when you refuse. I did not go to jail out of hatred, but out of conscience, as I once wrote later. Under a government which imprisons any unjustly, the true place for a just man is also a prison. If paying meant becoming a cog in an unjust machine, then I preferred silence behind bars to complicity in the open air. Now, do not imagine I was a hero. I was simply stubborn. But that stubbornness carried a lesson worth repeating in your age, because the world still demands your silent consent in small taxes of time, attention, and energy. Endless emails, meetings that sap your spirit, jobs that drain your years without giving back a single hour of true living. Most people pay without thinking, as if exhaustion were the price of belonging. But you are not obliged to pay every demand made of you. You can refuse. Refuse the meeting that does not matter. Refuse the scroll that numbs rather than nourishes. Refuse the voice that tells you busyness is the measure of worth. Your refusal will not land you in jail, though it may feel like rebellion, but it may deliver you something rarer, your own life returned. Freedom does not always begin with acquisition. More often, it begins with subtraction, with the courage to say no. When I lay on the hard cot in that cell, I asked myself if it was worth it. One night was easy. 10 years would have been harder. But even in that brief confinement, I learned that the bars of society are not always made of iron. They are made of habit, fear, conformity. And when you refuse, even for a single night, you feel them weaken. The irony is that many men outside those walls were far less free than I. They had paid their taxes, obeyed their masters, hurried to their shops, yet their days were not their own. My hours, even in jail, belonged to me. Think of your own life. How many bars have you accepted without protest? The deadlines, the expectations, the noise of endless consumption. They keep you inside a cell, yet the door is often unlocked. All it takes is the courage to push it open. That night in Concord jail shaped more than my own story. The words I wrote about it, my essay on civil disobedience, later reached Gandhi, who used them to resist the British Empire, and Martin Luther King Jr., who used them to fight segregation. A single refusal, multiplied across time, became a force that shook nations. And so I say to you, never underestimate the power of your small refusals, to leave a toxic workplace, to step away from a crowd that does not honor you, to disconnect, even for a moment, from the machine that drains you. These choices may look small, but they are seeds of freedom. As I once put it plainly, disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be slaves. Ask yourself tonight, where do you still obey without question? What bars have you mistaken for safety? And what single refusal might return you to yourself? My night in jail was short, but it was enough. Enough to remind me that freedom is not handed down by governments or employers or neighbors. It is claimed, one deliberate choice at a time. And yet, even as I walked free the next morning, a deeper question pressed itself on me. If I could resist society, if I could choose solitude over conformity, what then? Was I truly free or merely alone? There is a word people fear, solitude. They confuse it with loneliness, as if to be alone were to be abandoned. But I discovered at Walden that the two are not the same. Loneliness is emptiness. Solitude is fullness. One drains you, the other restores you. Day after day, I walked alone through the woods. Sometimes for hours, with no destination, only the steady rhythm of my steps and the whisper of pine needles above me. I would pause by the pond to watch ripples spread from the leap of a fish, or sit in silence while the wind braided itself through the reeds. In those moments, I was not lonely. I was accompanied by the world itself. I once wrote, "I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude." And it was true, for in solitude I found a depth of company that crowds never offered, the company of thought, the company of nature, the company of myself, finally honest, stripped of pretense. Now look at your own time. You are always connected, buzzing phones, constant feeds, endless messages, surrounded, yet often empty. The irony is sharp. Never has humanity been more networked, and never have so many felt so alone. Connection is not the same as presence. Notifications are not the same as companionship. Even my cabin creaked like a notification ping at times, the wood swelling, the roof sighing, the mice whispering their own errands. But unlike your alerts, These interruptions did not scatter me. They grounded me. They reminded me that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of life. Ask yourself, when was the last time you were truly alone, without reaching for distraction? Do you dare to sit in a room with nothing but your own mind? Many fear that silence. They believe it will swallow them. Yet silence is not a predator. It is a mirror. And in that mirror, you may see not emptiness, but the very face you have long avoided. I walked alone, yes, but never without company. The oaks stood like philosophers. The pond reflected the sky's moods more faithfully than any friend. The seasons changed, teaching lessons without words. Winter of endurance, spring of renewal, summer of abundance, autumn of release. Who could be lonely in such a crowd? Your world chases constant company. You measure your worth in followers, likes, views. You fear missing out. But what if the greatest wealth is missing into yourself, into silence, into the presence of the life around you? To be alone is not a failure. It is a practice. Each hour of solitude is a seed. Plant enough and you grow strength. A person who can stand quietly in solitude does not collapse in a crowd. He carries stillness with him. This is why solitude is medicine. When I returned from my walks, my mind was clearer, my spirit lighter. Problems shrank, ideas ripened, energy returned. Solitude did what no crowd, no sermon, no busy day could do. It healed. So I tell you, seek solitude, even in your restless century. A walk without your phone, a meal eaten in silence, a few minutes watching the play of clouds. It is not withdrawal, but nourishment. Loneliness is hunger. Solitude is food. As I learned at Walden, I am never less lonely than when I am alone. And so, if you long for rest, do not fear solitude. Fear instead the constant noise that drowns your own voice. Fear the crowd that leaves you emptier than silence ever could. But silence is not only an escape, it is a medicine. At Walden, I walked every day, not to reach a destination, but to be moved by the earth itself. I rose with the sun and let my steps wander through fields, over hills, across frozen ground or muddy paths. Some days I returned with wet boots, other days with frost biting my beard, and in summer with dust clinging to my skin. But always I returned restored. Each season taught me its lesson. The rain reminded me that life grows best when nourished slowly, drop by drop. The frost showed me that beauty endures even in hardship, when every branch is etched in silver. The summer sun burned away my restlessness, teaching me stillness in heat. The autumn leaves whispered of letting go, and I listened, learning that release is as important as growth. I once wrote, "Heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads," and I believed it, for the miracle was not far away, not locked in temples or books, but waiting in every step across the earth. Even my obsession with measuring became a form of devotion. I sounded the depths of Walden Pond with a line and stone, lowering it carefully until it struck bottom. Again and again I measured, recording each detail. Some laughed at my diligence, but to me, the pond was not a body of water, it was a body of truth. By knowing its depth, I felt I was learning something of my own. You may think this quaint or eccentric, but tell me, when was the last time you looked closely at the world around you? When did you last watch the rain fall without reaching for shelter, or trace the arc of a sunset without checking your phone? Your world rushes you past the miracles at your feet. You see them perhaps, but you do not notice them, and in not noticing, you starve. Modern science now repeats what I knew by instinct. The Japanese call it Shinrin-yoku, forest bathing. Doctors prescribe time among trees to reduce stress, lower blood pressure, heal the anxious mind. Studies prove what I lived, that a walk in the woods is medicine, that silence among leaves repairs the damage noise has done, that looking at the green of a forest calms the nervous system. You need no pills for this cure, only patience and presence. Think of the way your chest loosens when you breathe fresh air, how your pulse slows when you sit by water, how your thoughts soften when you look at fireflies in the dark. This is not luxury, this is necessity. A human cut off from nature is like a fish cut from water. He may flap for a while, but he will not thrive. So I ask you, where is your Walden? Perhaps not a pond, but a park, a trail, even a single tree outside your window. Do not underestimate its power. Even a short walk beneath branches can return you to yourself. Even a few minutes of sky can remind you that you belong to something larger. When I listened to the wind moving through the pines, I did not feel small. I felt right-sized. The world was vast, yes, but not indifferent. It welcomed me. It healed me. And when I returned from those walks, I carried that stillness inside. A medicine stronger than any tonic. You live in an age of constant remedies, supplements, treatments, therapies. Many are useful, but sometimes the cure is older than medicine. To step into the woods, to breathe where the air is unbroken, to feel your place not as master of nature, but as part of it. As I wrote, I went to the woods to see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and what it taught was not theory, but cure. A cure for restlessness, a cure for despair, a cure for the exhaustion of being always at war with yourself. Nature did not solve every problem, but it reminded me that not every problem needs solving. Some need only to be witnessed, accepted, and carried in silence. That is medicine enough. Yet to live this way, you must accept being different. At Walden, I lived outside the cadence of society. My neighbors marched to the beat of commerce, gossip, church bells, and deadlines. I moved at another tempo altogether. The quiet rhythm of the pond, the rise of the sun, the slow unfurling of bean leaves. To many, I looked idle. To me, they looked asleep. As I once wrote, if a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away. I refused to keep pace, simply because others did. Why should I hurry because they hurry? Why should I measure myself against their yardsticks when I had my own? The world, then as now, prized conformity. Farmers planted what their neighbors planted. Clerks spoke of what the newspapers told them. Families bought what fashion demanded. And I planted beans no one else wanted, spoke thoughts no one asked for, and wore clothes others mocked. Does this sound familiar? Your world has different names: productivity, hustle, networking, FOMO. But the pressure is the same. Everyone running, scrolling, competing, fearing that if they slow down, they will be left behind. You measure yourself in followers, promotions, possessions, and wonder why exhaustion is the only prize. The lesson is simple, though it takes courage to live. Do not run just because the crowd runs. Do not march to a drum that deafens your own. You have felt this pressure, the pressure to answer emails late into the night, the pressure to post constantly so the algorithm will not forget you, the pressure to chase a life others call successful, though it leaves you weary and hollow. This is the tyranny of pace. The courage is to step aside. At Walden, I discovered that my true rhythm was slower, deeper. A walk of 3 hours through the woods, with no destination but wonder, did more for me than a week of rushing. Writing in my journal at dawn gave me more wealth than coin. Listening to the silence of the pond gave me more companionship than the chatter of a crowd. So I ask you, what is your drummer? Do you even hear him beneath the noise? Perhaps his beat is faint, hidden under the tempo of deadlines and notifications. Yet he waits. He has always waited. And if you dare to listen, you may find that your life belongs to another rhythm entirely. The courage to be different is not flamboyance. It is not rebellion for its own sake. It is simply fidelity to your own soul. It is walking barefoot when others wear polished shoes. It is resting when others demand speed. It is trusting that your pace, however slow, is not a failure, but a truth. This courage will not make you popular. My neighbors called me eccentric, lazy, even arrogant. They could not understand why I refused to play the same game. But history rarely remembers the loudest crowd. It remembers those who dared to listen to a different drum. And so I tell you, dare to pause. Dare to measure success, not in busyness, but in stillness. Dare to listen to your own pulse rather than the algorithms. You will feel fear, the fear of being left behind, of missing out. But missing out on noise is not a loss. It is a gain. I once said, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. I said it not to mock them, but to warn. If you follow only the crowd's pace, desperation will be your rhythm. To step differently is to risk misunderstanding. But it is also to claim freedom. At Walden, my steps were my own. They carried me into silence, into clarity, into the rare joy of a life that belonged to me. And from that difference came not only peace, but words. Words I felt compelled to share. Because a life apart is not enough. It must be shared through words. When I left Walden Pond after 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days, I did not leave empty-handed. I carried with me words, pages filled with mornings of silence, nights of thought, days of labor and wonder. Those pages became Walden, the book by which most now know me. A record not only of how I lived, but of why. In Walden, I wrote of beans and birds, of frozen ponds and starlit skies. I wrote of simplicity, refusal, and the strange joy of being alone yet never lonely. My neighbors called me eccentric, even useless. To them, I was a man who played at hermit while others worked. But history has its own ears, and it listened differently. What Concord dismissed, the world embraced. For Walden was more than a diary. It was a mirror that asked every reader, are you living or merely being lived? Do you march to your own drummer or to the clamor of the crowd? Those questions echoed far beyond my cabin until they reached your century, and still they ring. And then there was my small essay, born of a single night in jail, Civil Disobedience. I had not planned it. I simply wrote what conscience demanded, that a man must not wait for a government to be just, but must live justly himself, even if it means disobedience. That essay traveled farther than my feet ever could. It found its way to Gandhi, who read it by lamplight in India, and turned it into a movement that shook an empire. It reached Martin Luther King Jr., who carried its spirit into the streets of America, defying laws that demanded silence in the face of segregation. My one night in Concord jail stretched into decades of courage across the world. And here lies the paradox. A man mocked in his own town became a whisper in the ears of giants. Do not wait, then, for applause from your neighbors. The truth you live may be too large for them to see, but the world is wide, and it listens in its own time. Think of your own life. You may not build a cabin or write a book, but your words, your choices, your refusals, they matter. To speak honestly, to write plainly of your experience, is itself an act of resistance in a world that prefers silence. A single sentence of truth can ripple farther than you imagine. Ask yourself, what story are you leaving behind? Is it only emails, posts, transactions, or is it a record of courage, however small, a journal, a note, a conversation where you dared to speak what mattered? Do not underestimate the power of your testimony. Walden was my testimony, civil disobedience my refusal. Both began in solitude, both were ignored at first, and yet both became seeds that outlived me. Your story, too, may lie unread for a season, but seasons change, and one day someone may read your words and find the courage to change their life. I tell you this not to glorify myself. I was no saint. I was stubborn, impatient, often poor in coin and awkward in company. But I dared to write what I lived, and in doing so, I joined a lineage far greater than my own, a lineage of those who spoke when silence was safer. So tonight, I ask you, will you let your life remain unspoken, or will you leave some trace, however modest, of the truth you have lived? The world is filled with noise, but it is always hungry for voices that speak from the marrow. As I once wrote, how vain it is to sit down to write when you have not stood up to live. First, live, then write, and do not fear if your words seem small. All great rivers begin as whispers in the ground. And now, before sleep, let me leave you with a final ritual. You have walked with me through Concord's classrooms, where a restless boy refused to sit still. You have stood by the rough boards of my cabin, counted the beans in their rows, and traced the soundings of Walden Pond. You have stepped into the jail cell, where I chose refusal over obedience, and you have wandered with me into forests where silence cured more than any medicine. What does it all add up to? Not wealth, not fame, not respectability. My neighbors often thought me strange, a man out of joint with his times. But the measure of a life is not the applause of the crowd. It is the fidelity to one's own truth. And mine was simple. Live deliberately, simplify without fear, seek solitude as strength, refuse what is unjust, and listen, always listen, to the quiet lessons of nature. You do not need to copy my life. The world does not need 1,000 cabins scattered by ponds. What it needs are men and women who dare to claim their hours back from distraction, who dare to measure success in moments of presence rather than in numbers on a screen. The courage to be different, the courage to be free, can take many forms. For me, it was beans and journals. For you, it may be something else. But the essence is the same: to live awake. As I once wrote, only that day dawns to which we are awake. There is more day to dawn. The sun is but a morning star. Tonight, I leave you with a ritual. Nothing complicated. The kind of ritual anyone can practice here and now. Close your eyes. Picture a cabin, small and rough, standing beside still water. Inside, there is nothing but a narrow bed, a table, a chair. No noise, no demands, no expectations. Only space. Space for breath. Space for thought. Space for you. Now, hear the silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. The wind shifting through the pines, the gentle lap of water against the shore, the creak of wood settling into itself. That silence is not empty. It is alive. And if you let it, it will enter you, softening your pulse, loosening the weight you carry, making room for rest. Carry this silence with you. Let it remind you that life is not measured in constant motion, but in stillness, that freedom is not only the ability to choose, but the courage to refuse, that wealth is not in accumulation, but in hours truly lived. And when you wake tomorrow, remember, you do not have to run at the world's pace. You can walk to your own rhythm. You can listen to your own drummer. You can choose less and discover more. Do not just fall asleep tonight. Fall awake into your own life.